Intel is laying off, what, 15,000 workers now in this new plan that you've just announced, or cost-saving plan for 2025. How many of those 15,000 workers are Americans?
I can tell you that, laying off anybody is no easy decision.
You considered all other ways of cost-cutting measures before you laid off the 15,000? Is that what you're telling me?
We are facing economic headwinds, and it's to be able to make sure the company is efficient, operating efficiently, we are going through a downsizing moment.
Did you think it was efficient to give your CEO a 45% pay increase year over year while you're cutting 15,000 jobs? Mr. What is it, Gelsinger, I think it is? He made $11.6 million in 2022. Now he's making $17 million. Is that an efficiency? Mr. Rittner, let me start with you. You're with Intel, right?
Yes, that's correct.
We've been asking questions about Russia. Let me just ask you a question or two about China, if I could. Why is it that your company is investing so much in China, particularly in Chinese artificial intelligence and semiconductor startups?
Yeah, China is the second largest economy in the world. Any proceeds that we actually make in China, we reinvest back into the U.S. so that we can contribute to U.S. leadership.
Well, wait a minute. So you're telling me it's good for the United States that you are investing billions of dollars in Chinese artificial intelligence? Let me just read you from a Financial Times article. Intel's venture capital arm has emerged as one of the most active foreign investors in Chinese artificial intelligence and semiconductor startups at a time that the chip maker is receiving billions of dollars from Washington to fund a technological arms race with Beijing. Is the money that you're getting from the United States government enabling your investment in China?
At this point, we have not received money from the United States, but the money that we're to receive is invested entirely in the United States to grow semiconductor manufacturing.
You have 43 China-based technology startups. Since your venture fund was launched in the early 1990s, has invested in more than 120 Chinese groups, including their data provider Crunchbase. I'm still quoting from the FT article. You've continued to back fledgling Chinese companies, even in the past year, even as many American companies have exited the market, the Chinese market that is, under pressure from U.S. authorities. It just seems strange to me that you're spending so much money, even as you're set to receive billions of dollars. By the way, I can't believe that you get no money from Washington, D.C. I find that hard to believe. But why is it that you are continuing to double down on the Chinese market? I mean, is this a good thing? Is it a good thing for Intel to be investing in Chinese artificial intelligence? I mean, they're our chief competitor.
The reason for our investment, Senator, is that there are unique characteristics, technologies that we can leverage so that we can build the greatest products here in the United States. Well,
yeah, I have no doubt that you're able to turn a significant profit off of what you invest in China, but how that benefits, inures to the benefit of the United States is opaque to me, not clear to me. What about your relationship with your suppliers in Xinjiang and Uyghur forced labor? Do you condemn the forced labor that the Chinese government and its suppliers use? I think maybe your mic's off.
I'm sorry, Senator. That particular question, I would leave that answer to the experts. I'm not an expert on that.
Well, wait a minute. You're not an expert on whether or not there's forced labor in China?
Correct.
Well, wait a minute. You're not willing to say here today that the Chinese are exploiting the Uyghurs?
I would leave that answer to that question to the experts.
Does it take an expert to know that there's slave labor in China, the Uyghurs are enslaved? Do you know who the Uyghurs are?
I do.
Okay. So are you willing to say that what the Chinese authorities are doing to the Uyghurs is wrong?
Sir, I'm not an expert to be able to make that
Oh,
case.
good Lord. I can't believe you're saying this. And, what's alarming about this is your company did the same thing. In December 2021, you issued a letter to your suppliers saying that the company is required to ensure our supply chain does not use any labor or source goods or services from the Xinjiang region. But then you apologized for it a week later on Chinese social media, saying that that letter was only written to comply with U.S. law. And now you're telling me you don't have a stance on it at all. Is that really your position?
Senator, I'm not in a position to make that statement.
You're not in a position to condemn forced labor in China?
I would condemn forced labor. I'm not an expert to be able to weigh in on whether China is engaging in such actions.
You have billions of dollars of investments in China. You are investing in Chinese artificial intelligence. You are investing in Chinese semiconductors. You are making who knows how much money in China, but you won't say that the Uyghurs being exploited is wrong? What is wrong with you people? That's not a rhetorical question. I can't believe I'm hearing this.
Personally, I believe that slave labor is wrong, yes.
Personally, well, oh, good. Well, I'm glad we've gotten that far. Now, why is your company associating itself with it?
I am not aware that my company is associated with it.
I cannot believe that we are sitting here having this conversation. I cannot believe that it is not easy for you to say that Intel will have nothing to do with forced labor and what the Chinese government is doing to the Uyghurs, a religious minority who are enslaved as we sit here and speak today. I can't believe that you won't just clearly say that's wrong, we condemn it, we will have nothing to do with it. This is astounding.
Senator, we do not support or tolerate our products being used in forced labor, slave labor, or child labor.
Yeah, but you just sat here and said that you don't have any idea if it's really going on in China.
But I'm not an expert in that.
It doesn't take an expert. It doesn't, everybody knows that this is the truth, right? I mean, would you give me the same answer about the Holocaust? Do you have to be an expert in that to know that it was wrong and that it happened? I mean, good Lord. I just have to tell you, I can't believe the U.S. government give you any money if this is what you're going to do with it and this is going to be the position of your company. Let me just ask you about one other thing while I have you here. Intel is laying off, 15,000 workers now in this new plan that you've just announced, or cost-saving plan for 2025. How many of those 15,000 workers are Americans?
Senator, I don't have a number at this point of who's being laid off. I can tell you that laying off anybody is no easy decision.
You considered all other ways of cost-cutting measures before you laid off the 15,000? Is that what you're telling me?
We are facing economic headwinds, and to be able to make sure the company is efficient, operating efficiently, we are going through a downsizing moment.
Did you think it was efficient to give your CEO a 45% pay increase year over year while you're cutting 15,000 jobs? Mr. What is it, Gelsinger, I think it is? He made $11.6 million in 2022. Now he's making $17 million. Is that an efficiency?
I'm not an expert on his salary.
Yeah. Well, you don't appear to be an expert on much, but I tell you what, it should not be hard to say that American jobs are important, American national security is important, and slave labor is wrong. And funding slave labor in China is absolutely an atrocity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really? I thought it was curious when you said that your company credo was to always put the public first.
It is.
Was that what you were doing when you were lying to doctors and patients about the addictive nature of opioids? Is that why your company agreed to billions of dollars in settlements with states and other localities because of what you did to further the opioid crisis?
We prevailed in the only 2 cases that were tried.
You settled for billions of dollars, and I brought one of those suits, and it's the proudest thing I ever did as Attorney General of the state of Missouri. Your company has made billions of dollars on American consumers, multiple times lying to them. And the idea that you now are looking actively for ways to limit the liability for further torts you have committed against the American people, I think is outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And if you want to know why the American people don't trust huge corporations, it's because of companies like yours.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. House, if I could just come back to you. Let me ask you about the Ingham case. I'm sure you remember that case. That was the one litigated in my state, in the state of Missouri. 22 plaintiffs who alleged that your baby powder caused ovarian cancer. By the way, didn't the FDA find that there were traces of asbestos in your baby powder?
The FDA outsourced to a lab that found asbestos, a trace amount of asbestos in one lot, and 150 studies thereafter were done of that batch and found no asbestos. And if there was asbestos in that...
Okay. That's quite the word salad. But if we just compress, I think the answer is yes, right? Did the FDA find that there were traces of asbestos in your baby powder?
No,
yes.
ultimately...
No?
Ultimately,
the Third Circuit got that wrong? I just read it in their opinion.
Ultimately, if the...
Wait. Answer my question. The Third Circuit was wrong about that? I just read it in their opinion. They said the FDA found traces of asbestos in your baby powder.
The FDA outsourced to a lab that found a trace amount of asbestos.
Okay,
thereafter.
so the answer is yes. So let's go back to the Ingham case then. I think it's a relevant question. Do you remember what the verdict was in the Ingham case, what the jury found, what they awarded?
As the chair properly stated, it was initially $4.6 billion for a consolidated trial of 22 plaintiffs that was reduced thereafter to $2.2 billion.
$2.24 billion finally on appeal. That's a lot of money. That's one case, 22 plaintiffs, 20 at the end of the day because of the appeal. You were facing how many additional cases after that?
We have thousands of cases.
Thousands, tens of thousands, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So one set of plaintiffs gets $2+ billion. You have the potential for, by that math, tens of billions more, right? Who knows
No,
what?
not necessarily, because recall, most claimants lose and receive zero.
So what you do is, after the Ingham case, your company panics, and what you do is you then decide, oh my gosh, we can't possibly do this. We don't want to pay these plaintiffs this kind of money. So you then create a separate company for the sole purpose of declaring bankruptcy and making sure that the tens of thousands of other plaintiffs get scraps.
The proposal that we had would never succeed and would not have succeeded but for the support of the claimants that had made the proposed resolution. We went to
I have no idea what you're saying. I thought it was plaintiffs who sued you that went all the way to the Third Circuit where they said you couldn't do what you're trying to do. You're saying that you're saying the plaintiffs wanted this? They like the Texas two-step? The plaintiffs want to be denied their day in court and denied recovery?
The majority of claimants, counsel representing the majority of claimants, yes, do want this resolution because most claimants receives nothing.
Let's talk about what you
did. Let's
talk about what you did. First of all, I think it's outrageous, the idea that plaintiffs want to be denied their day in court. That's why they took you to court. That's why the Third Circuit ruled against you. Let's talk about what you did. Here is, according to the Third Circuit, an abbreviated version of how you tried to avoid actually paying out liability. Old Consumer, which was one of your subsidiaries, merged into Chenango Zero LLC, a Texas limited liability company, wholly owned subsidiary of J&J, with Chenango Zero surviving the merger. Chenango Zero then effected a divisional merger under the Texas Business Code by which two new Texas limited liabilities were created, Chenango 1 and Chenango 2, and Chenango 0 ceased to exist. Then Chenango 1 converted into a North Carolina limited liability company and changed its name to LTL. Chenango 2 then merged into Curahee Holding Company, the direct parent company of LTL. Curahee survived the merger and then changed its name to Johnson & Johnson Consumer Incorporated. Are you here to tell us that you think that this is a great way to proceed and is fair to the consumers who had asbestos in their baby powder?
Indeed, the claimants after that transaction had access to more recourse than they did before, which is exactly the reason.
You created, in the words of the Third Circuit, you created a company with the sole purpose of sending it into bankruptcy. So you could limit your liability. Here's what I don't understand. Johnson & Johnson is a hugely profitable company, isn't it?
This is where we're talking about a subsidiary.
Oh, I know, but you own them all. You own them all. So aren't you hugely profitable? I mean, how much money did you make on the COVID vaccine, for example?
Nothing, actually. We made nothing.
You got billions of dollars in subsidies from the federal government. Taxpayers have paid you billions. How much did you make on opioids? All those opioids you prescribed? How much did you make on that over the years?
I do not have that information.
Really? I thought it was curious when you said that your company credo was to always put the public first.
It is.
Was that what you were doing when you were lying to doctors and patients about the addictive nature of opioids?
We did
Is that
not-
why your company agreed to billions of dollars in settlements with states and other localities because of what you did to further the opioid crisis?
We prevailed in the only 2 cases that were tried. and
You
the
settled
jury
for billions of
determined.
dollars, and I brought one of those suits, and it's the proudest thing I ever did as Attorney General of the state of Missouri. Your company has made billions of dollars on American consumers, multiple times lying to them. And the idea that you now are looking actively for ways to limit the liability for further torts you have committed against the American people, I think is outrageous, absolutely outrageous. And if you want to know why the American people don't trust huge corporations, it's because of companies like yours. And I would just say to my colleagues, if you want to know why private rights of action are so darn important and why we need to use them against the big tech companies, this is the reason why. One jury verdict got $4.6 billion. That's a hammer. Companies fear it. They fear it. It's why they're trying to distort the bankruptcy code to avoid it. We need to give more Americans the ability to get that recourse in court. And we need to change the bankruptcy code to make sure that companies like J&J can't avoid it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.